The definition of wealth in my books is just freedom. Wealth is freedom, right? But what is it? What is wealth good for if you're wealthy in terms of money, but you don't have time, or you don't have a choice to live or be at any specific space and time you want to be in it, right? So he decided the first thing he needed to do was to form the earth and then figure out what was going to dwell in it. So real estate came first. And so we're here to discuss that and how do we translate that into wealth. First of all, the definition of wealth in my books is just freedom. Wealth is freedom, right? So I know people talk about wealth in terms of money. It's really not. There's a component of that that's money, but what is it? What is wealth good for if you're wealthy in terms of money, but you don't have time, or you don't have a choice to live or be at any specific space and time you want to be in it, right? So wealth affords us the freedom of time, the freedom of finances, and definitely the freedom of location. So you can choose to live anywhere you want or be anywhere you want because you're wealthy and you're free. You're not tied to, oh, I have to be in Texas on this day because if I don't do this, then my patients are going to have an issue. So wealth is now focusing beyond. I've bought my first home. I'm settled. I'm paying this mortgage. I'm having to work to pay my mortgage, right? What you want to do is to make money now work for you. Instead of you working, now you want to make your money to work for you. So the question, and it's a question that everybody comes into terms with and in grips with at certain times. You start to ask yourself, how much farther can my dollar go? What can I do with my dollar? And real estate affords one of the best investment places to actually get your dollar to start working for you. You know, we know this. It's interesting to me a lot of times when we sit and we start to think about wealth in so many other ways. A goat only begets a goat, right? And a sheep can only beget a sheep. But the only thing we always forget is that when it comes to money, it is us who have to go and make it. It doesn't make sense, right? Money should be able to beget money, right? And so once you start thinking about wealth in that sense, to know that wealth is about money has to beget money. So you have to place your money in a place where that money has to go work for you and produce some other more money. When you're in a wealth mindset, your mindset sits in about where am I going to place my money so that this money can produce something in the time that is there, because wealth is also measured in time. You can't just have wealth where your money sits in a place perpetually. So wealth is also measured in time. So that's why you have things that are called an APY, right? So how your rate of growth was in a year or in a 12-month period, wealth is measured in time. And so having set that background for us, the thing about wealth and real estate wealth, and I always say this, to successfully, and I'm moving broadly from wealth and I'm concentrating now just going to real estate, for you to be able to successfully invest in real estate. And I've had this being discussed here, and I think Marcy and Faith touched on it. When is the best time to buy real estate? The best time to buy real estate was yesterday. The next best time is today. And the thing that you must know or be aware of when you're doing this is the economy, because a lot of times people ask that question because they don't know how the economy is handling that. The thing that drives that question is, does it make sense? All these economic cycles that we go through, does it dissuade one from doing real estate, or is there a better portion of that economic cycle than the other? You got to be very adept when you go into investing, especially in real estate, because in real estate, the one cardinal rule that you must always understand with real estate is that you make your money when you buy, and you also lose your money when you buy. So it's not, okay, I'm going to buy it and then I'll make my money later. I can typically tell you how much money you're able to make the moment you buy that home, how much money you're going to be able to cash flow on your rent the moment you buy it. You should be able to tell that, and you should be able to project that far much out, because that is what informs what you should buy and what you should not buy. Coming back to the economic cycles, which typically makes us pose that question, what's a good time to buy? You have to know the four economic cycles that exists. So those four are your peak, your recession, your trough, which is the time when it's just at the lowest point, that trough when it just, hits the very bottom. And then there's the expansion. So those four cycles are things that you have to know. But also, more importantly, now within that, you also have to understand that real estate also has its own cycles. So you have economic cycles that you're dealing with, and then real estate also has its own cycles. And your strategy in those cycles, the reason why you want to know that is because you want to continue to buy. Like we said, you must continue to buy. There's no wrong time for you to buy real estate. The only thing you have to understand is that what economic cycle we're in and what real estate cycle are we in, right? So once you know those, you're able to operate that. Real estate has four cycles as well. It has a recovery cycle. It also has an expansion cycle. It also has a hyper supply and a recession. In short terms, you'll hear people say it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, right? Those are always informed by prevailing economic circumstances. And real estate being very local, very, very local. So we may have recessionary economic, real estate cycle in a place like, say, Odessa, Texas. There's a recessionary one. And then in Dallas-Fort Worth, it's an expansion one. So you have to know those cycles. You have to know what markets you're investing into. And so that way you can go in and apply. So for instance, if we're dealing with a place where the real estate cycle there indicates that there is a recession, right, in that area, that essentially means that there's decline, right? There's almost decline. There's no movement in that market. So this is more potentially going to be like a buyer's market, because the seller that's trying to sell is not able to sell to as many people as he would, because recessions just typically mean that people are buying less, people are withholding more of their money, they're trying to save, they're trying to money is scarce. And so for an investor, that's a good time, because the person that really must sell is not going to sell at the highest. He's going to sell something at a very low price. Also, when we have a short supply of real estate, also that simply means that there's a lot more demand for it, right? There's a lot of demand for it. Everybody wants it, but you have less. So the seller now is on the upper hand. The strategy is to apply to that. So you would have to sweeten the deal for the seller to actually sell you that property, or you apply another rate that says, you know what, it's cheaper for me to buy land then, and maybe I'll be able to build, right? Instead of buying outright. Now maybe able to just buy a piece of land and then build it. And so those are the things that you look into to ensure that you are staying relevant regardless of what economic cycle or regardless of what real estate cycle we are actually faced with. Then also the other thing that comes with real estate that I wanted to show is that, because we're talking about economic situations and issues, real estate is one of the best investments for you to be able to essentially scale through all those economic cycles. And especially, we're hearing the word inflation a lot, especially when it's in inflations. Real estate does very well in holding value. One thing about wealth that I also didn't mention is that when you have wealth, you also have to be able to have ways to preserve the intrinsic values of the money that you have, because money is constantly losing value. So if I bought something for $100 today, tomorrow that amount, because money goes, money essentially loses value. Tomorrow that $100 is $99. I want that to still be $100 or better. So the vehicles which I would put that is in something that real estate, because real estate typically grows in value, right? The value will always go higher. It typically grows, right? It typically grows at a rate of about maybe 3 to 4% a year. And so if I put it in something like that, my $100 is probably going to be 100.01 tomorrow, right? But also, that's why we also say you have to find vehicles to move your money to. I can buy a bar of gold, and that holds my money where it is. So those are things that you'd have to do. Real estate does that very well. Real estate also gives you a lot of tax benefits, right? So when you're doing real estate, you're able to write off a lot of things, depending on how you're able to do it. You're able to write off a lot of things on your taxes, and then what else? Just in terms of the many other things that you're able to do is that you can be able to save on taxes at the rate at which it actually beats inflation. You understand what I'm saying? That point is kind of hard for me to get across. It's just something, but your money is always in competition with inflation. Inflation is what actually reduces your money's worth. And so real estate, because it's able to typically gain, you're able to hold your money's worth in real estate. And then also, that being the case, you also have to look at what strategy you're using, right? So if I'm doing fix and flip, for instance, let me go back on that, because I want to really stress on that, because if you realize right now, as you live in this country, if you have a good calculator and you care about numbers, you'll find out that typically about the first 5 months of the year, you're working for the government, right? You're working for the government. You're paying taxes. You're paying all these local taxes. You're paying all these other, value add taxes. You're paying for 5 months. That's the general term. In fact, a lot of times people say real estate is your biggest purchase in your lifetime. No, it's not. It's actually taxes. Taxes is what you're going to pay the most for when you leave this earth. If you don't do anything to mitigate it, your biggest expense on earth will have been taxes. And so just because of that, real estate being a vehicle for which you can actually be able to mitigate some of those tax expenses, it's a great, great, great way to invest. So how do you do real estate investing? So real estate investing typically is just like with everything else. You can see that Marcy went to school to study to be a real estate agent, that she can be able to help you to figure out which house best fit, what areas, what works, study different markets and get that data, right? And the same thing for Faith. This is the best strategy for us to be able to get the best loan for you for the amount of money that you'll be able to afford, right? So real estate is the same. Investing is the same. One thing that you always have to know is that success always leaves tracks. Success always will leave some tracks. If somebody is successful, that's why we have recipes, right? So I know Dr. Casper's wife makes some of the best cakes in town. And if she gave me a recipe here today and Bethwel say, Bethwel, here's how you're going to make this cake. Here's a recipe, follow this to the T. I'm not great at baking, but if I followed exactly what she gives me, what are the chances I'm going to make that cake and it will taste almost exactly the way she made hers? What are the chances, right? So it's a recipe. Success follows tracks. So if you want to succeed in real estate, you have to find somebody that has already baked that cake and then see how that recipe puts in together. So you must have a good mentor when you're doing real estate. A lot of us, we do real estate in this country. And I'm passionate about this, about our people especially. Where we come from, we see somebody starts a duka over there. A duka is a small shop. And they stock it with Big G gum and everything, all that good stuff. And then the next day somebody says, well, I see a line of people buying stuff over there. So even me, I'm going to open one. And then we open one. And then another person comes and opens one. You go to the market and you find everybody is selling tomatoes from this row to the other row. The next row, somebody is selling mandazi from this row to this row. And we try to replicate that. The way to do business and the way to invest is to first figure out what the problem is. Either that or create the problem. And I'll tell you good examples. A good example is how many people use iPhones. You have iPhones, right? And you know for a fact that every 2 to 3 years, you're going to need a new iPhone. Is it because you're overusing your iPhone? Or is it because Apple has created a problem, right? So that they can have the right product. Because then, well, your problem is because you have an iPhone 6. But we resolved that problem with an Apple 8, right? iPhone 8. So they created a problem to where they can constantly provide the products. For real estate, also, the same thing you have to think about. What is the product that I need? Is there a need for housing in this area? And one way to know that is to follow and see what government programs are saying. Always the only reason I watch news is to see what is happening, where is the need in the market, where is the government trying to throw money at. Government exists for social services only. All the other things are fluffs. Only social services. That's why they take taxes so they can build for you roads. They take taxes so they can build for you schools. They take taxes so they can provide some social service to you, right? And government cannot build even housing, right? Government cannot build housing. Housing is a social need. So the biggest person that drives the need for housing is government. Because government wants you properly housed in housing programs. And if you talk to Faith, some of these programs, we can trace them all the way to the government, right? Like the USDA funding programs, we can always, FHA, we can trace it all the way back to the government, right? Because government wants to provide that housing for you. So now that being said, you as an investor, they need, you as a real estate investor, the need and the product that you have to determine is there a need for me in that market? And if there's need, like the Dallas-Fort Worth area market, there's a lot of need for housing, several different types and niches of housing. And you have to choose which niche you want to serve. And then once you decide that this one is the market that I want to serve, then you have to come with a product. The product is going to now say, okay, fine. In this area, we have $1 million homes. There are several people that are wanting to pay $10,000 per month for rent, and I can provide that. Or you can go to a place that says, you know what, somebody can only afford $1,500 a month, so I must go somewhere and look for a house that's about $150,000 so I can be able to provide this service to them. You have to figure out your product to address the need. And that's why we're there in real estate. That's where we gain. We gain because we are providing a service that people need, a service that the government actually needs. So I think in very broad terms, I'm using very, very broad to kind of span your minds to see how investors play a role and why we think real estate investment and how it actually works in actual sense. It is not just about you getting a house. Your mindset is the most important thing when you're actually looking at real estate investment. Your mindset is the most important thing. And so understand the market here, understand things in the way they're meant to be, so that you can hedge your own risks. One thing I also wanted to talk about is just, doing your research, doing your homework, and knowing how things work in this country. Not necessarily work like it works in Kenya. In Kenya, you can buy a piece of land in the middle of nowhere. And it's a buyer willing, a seller willing, and it goes like that. I can buy land for 1,000 shillings today, and tomorrow I decide I'm selling it for 300,000. Nobody's looking at data so much to figure out. It's just that they feel like they want to buy it. No, in this country, everything runs on data. So you have to look at, and that's why Marcy will tell you that I'm going to look at comps. I'm going to look at comparables here so that you don't overdo your house, or you don't buy too much house, or you don't go in a place that, on a house that is upside down the moment you actually buy it. Those are all real estate terms. So comps is just data. So you have to do and respect data. One of the things I see in our community that we're doing a lot of, and I'll give you an example. I had a friend that came to me one time. He wanted to, he met with a bunch of other friends. And so they were inviting me to go buy a piece of land with them in some place called Whitney, Texas. And you guys can Google that, Whitney. And I can tell you so that you know how to look at things. When you look at Whitney, Texas, and I was like, okay, what's the value on this? I said that the deal is so good. They have financing on the spot. You can come in and we can just get low spots here. These spots, we can definitely develop them into some some Airbnbs later, because people come here a lot and do this. And I'll say, okay, remember the first thing I said is that you must have a product that addresses the needs. Something has to address a need. So the first thing I'm looking for is there actually a need in Whitney for people to use Airbnbs? And I went to Whitney, I looked up Whitney, and I didn't see any need for that because data is there. Data is available. There's less than 2,000 people living in that city. That city has no operating sewage systems that were actually supplying that land. That means I have to think about developing that or sinking something like to cater for that. And that's more expensive. Developing land is very, very expensive. So when you end up with things like that, and then, okay, next thing I'm thinking about, is the land arable? Is it something that I can just use it? I just grow something here, then now look at the quality of the land. The information is there. You can be able to tell what type of soil these lands exist on. And it didn't qualify for me to even plant anything on it. And so it didn't make any sense for me to buy that land. They ended up buying the land anyway because, we're going to be Kenyans. And then years later, they come and ask me, how can I dispose of that land? And I'm like, oh, well, you're going to have to find somebody else that you're going to convince that's not aware that they can look up data, that it's going to be hard to sell it to somebody else, because if they look at the data that I looked at, they're not going to buy it. And so those are the things that I would probably say for now. But because of time and because I already previously said that I only work better with questions, if there's anything I didn't cover with this, then we'll probably answer it on the Q&A, and I'll hand it back to Dr. Casper.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Bethwel. I think that was very great. As you guys have seen, you've gone through an entire college course right here. I mean, one of the core things here, I like what Bethwel said, just finding a vehicle. If your wealth does not have a vehicle, it's going down. If you have not plugged in your money somewhere, that money is losing value by the day. And so that's so powerful and so important. I mean, there's so many terms and things like cash flow that we talked about, I mean, even you think about all the questions. What is a landlord? What's a flipper? What's a developer? I mean, there is so much in real estate, but the question is, do you have the core thing he said? Do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody who can be able to train you in understanding the ins and outs of real estate and how you can, and one thing you've heard, real estate is one of the core things. Most major investment funds around the world, that real estate usually actually is a part of the portfolio, right? So I think this is very key, very important. We have one of the things that I like what he said, just to finish, is on the question of purpose and wealth. Wealth is a dynamic that affects space and time. Your space on where you can be, when you can be there, right? A lot of us, we are trapped in our space because of work, and you're trapped. You cannot just go anywhere you want when you want. Somebody controls a major part of your life to get the paycheck. And then time, just the quality of life. That's why a lot of people, honestly, I feel like they like to go on sometimes to Kenya and just enjoy that afternoon long tea, and that, because most of the people here, you are in the American stream, and so the challenge is also there is no time, and the quality of life drops. One person said, I was talking to an American, he said, we work, we live to work, and we work to live, we retire and die. So that's where unfortunately the trap, people have entered into this trap, and people cannot figure out to break the cycle. And if anything, today we are learning one of the ways in which to break that cycle. And even as we are about to take a quick break, one of the things that and I'll put an email or a link for those who might be interested, because one of the things that it may not be directly with Actualize, but may be more directly to investments. If you're a person who's actually interested in investing, and maybe you are you're not sure about your knowledge, you're not sure about your networks, one of the things that I'm going to possibly offer is investment fund that is professionally ran. And I'll say that not in the sense of chama. We are so used to chama and confusion, like that example of buying that land. I met another group who had known nothing about oil and gas, and they wasted money again. There's so many groups that waste money because they don't have professionalization, they don't have understanding. And so when we're talking about some of these things that you talked about, mentorship and networking, that's what you get when you have a professional manager. Comps and analytics. Do you know comps and analytics? Cash flow management and acquisition. So if you're a person who you think you may you may have a little bit of cash or funds, or you think you might want to take a step into investing diversely, I will put an email probably after the break. And if you're interested, send me an email, because when we want to create, I want to create a fund, and that fund will also have shareholders. So, and will continues to grow in the areas of investing, because again, I really believe that moving towards a more professionally managed investment funds is the next step that we need to take opportunities of everything that this land provides. And there's a lot of things that will definitely come out of here, and from what I was hearing in the investment side of things. So thank you so much for that much knowledge. Thank you, Bethwel, for teaching us about wealth and understanding wealth. There's a lot there. I mean, some of those discussions in the investment club or group were, how do you know when to hold? Landlord thinks different from a flipper depending on the dynamics. So you might find yourself as a landlord versus you might find yourself as a flipper. And so how do we handle these investments? How do we best handle things that are better for cash flow, and what are better things for holding for the future? So thank you so much, Bethwel, for that much information. Thank you for the team here. Thank you for Rose Faith, my wife, for helping put and hold everything together so we could be able to actualize this and record it and put it into a nice setting. And also, I'll be glad to be sharing this to all our audiences out there. This will be great. Finally, as Rose Faith said, also make sure you go on the Actualize YouTube and subscribe, because we're going to be loading segments of this and in the past on the Actualize Talks YouTube page. And then finally, for anybody who is interested in possibly finding networks and vehicles, if you want to join in into something that might be growing for the future, please send an email to actualize@actualizecenter.com. That is actualize@actualizecenter.com. Just send an email that you're interested in future possible investment fund, and then we'll be able to try and put that package together and send it to you in the future, in the near future, because that would be great, a great way to grow wealth in a network with professionals who have knowledge and understanding. And so with all that, again, I know time is gone, but I want to thank you, all of you, and all our participants for joining us today. And so may God bless you all. May God keep you all. As I said, oh, yes, before I forget, we will send all the media handles and all the contacts for all our speakers today. Just put that in the chats or send that to me personally so I can email out. There are also a lot of people who unfortunately were unable to make it for one reason or another, sending their apologies. But if I can get those emails, we will forward those emails out to our network so that they can be able to network and follow up with questions and other things. So again, join the Emeralds Club, and keep on flowing with us. We'll send all those contacts out. I hope you are blessed. Clearly, you can see, it looked like a long time, but time flies so fast doing these things. Until next one, may God bless you all and keep you all. And thank you for your time. Again, we have those contacts now. They're in the chats. You can grab them right now, or check your email. I'll send an email to all the attendees who are registered. And if you do want, we can also send that to our general list. We have a general list email. We'll also send that so that we can publicize this. And then we'll also, as I said, hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll have a good production of this whole program. And I think it will be good. I was talking to Faith and Mercy, so I actually thought, man, maybe we will package this and segments of this, and we will put it together and we'll upload it on YouTube, part segments of this discussion, which is important. So may God bless you all again. Thank you for your time. Much love and appreciation. I don't think there's anything else I've left out. And so you guys have a great weekend, and God bless you.
Welcome to Actualize Talks, your destination for purpose discovery, setting vision goals, and fostering leadership growth.
I'm joined in studio by Dr. Casper.
Joining me now in the studio, we have Dr. Casper.